Last September, I began a certification program on the nervous system taught by Leah Davidson. Recently, I sat down with her to talk about nervous system regulation. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. Leah Davidson has so much knowledge about this powerful topic. Leah is a speech language pathologist and nervous system resilience coach with over 26 years of experience working in brain and nervous system health. She is the host of the Building Resilience podcast and the founder of Resilient Brilliance, a stationery brand focused on emotional well-being and nervous system care. Leah teaches nervous system informed approaches to stress, resilience, and chronic symptoms through programs, retreats, and advanced training. She lives in Toronto with her husband, and they have a blended family of 5 grown kids. Welcome to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I'm Jill Pack, and this is episode number 195, entitled The Power of Regulation with Leah Davidson. So here is my conversation with Leah. I am so excited to be here with one of my coaches and fellow colleagues, Leah Davidson. I'm so excited to introduce you all to her. I've mentioned her on the podcast before, so now you actually get to hear from her in person. So I'm so excited. So let's take a minute and let people know who you are, a little bit about you.
For sure, for sure. So my name is Leah Davidson, and I am so happy to be here and have this conversation. I'm excited about it. I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, with my husband, and we're empty nesters, although some of those young ones, will be coming back a little bit, back and forth. But we have a blended family of 5 grown kids. They're all in their 20s now. So we're navigating midlife, empty nesting, young adult kids, all the things that really get my nervous system activated in a whole different way than I ever thought possible.
Yeah. It just
So,
keeps surprising us, doesn't
oh,
it?
yeah, it's a great surprise. So I am a nervous system coach. I run an advanced training in nervous system resilience, which you are a part of, and I love having you there. And I also have some other communities. I have a mental health stationery line where teaching people about emotional well-being and nervous system health. And my background, though, is I am a speech language pathologist, and I have been doing that for 27 years. And that's really where it actually began way back when, but I won't bring you there as to what led me to the role of being a speech pathologist. But as a speech language pathologist, I worked and still do work with some clients in the area of traumatic brain injury and helping people with their communication skills as related to their cognition, their memory, their executive function, their decision making, their self-regulation. And along the way, it just became apparent where I started doing my own observations of what do people need in order for them to be able to change their thinking, learn new strategies, compensate for some of their losses. And a dysregulated nervous system was something that was often blocking people from progress. So it just kind of very organically evolved my interest, my passion, going through my own recognizing burnout and compassion fatigue and all the things that as a helping professional in that area, I didn't really realize the impact that it would have on my own nervous system. So a lot of work with myself there just naturally progressed into the coaching world, working with people who don't have brain injuries, but we all have nervous systems. And that's the common, it doesn't really change. And that has been beautiful just to learn how similar we all are. We're all very, very different. But I always like to joke with people and say, yeah, but you're not that special. There's certain common humanity with all of us. And I think while we all have different nervous systems, we all have a nervous system. And it's so important to get to know our own individual nervous system. So I am loving to shout it from the rooftops about the importance of getting to know your own nervous system, what it is, why it's important, how it impacts everything that you do. And it can really change your life on a very, very deep level when you understand your nervous system.
Yeah, I find that is what I have noticed too. Just the power in understanding my unique nervous system.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on something you said, the common humanity that we all have a nervous system, but yet
Mm.
each of us are unique at the
Yeah.
same time. It's like
Yeah.
there's something beautiful about that and settling, right?
Yeah.
That idea of like, nothing's wrong with me. We all have these
Mhm.
experiences, and it makes sense that mine reacts this way or that I
Yeah.
react this way or have
Yeah.
this effect myself. So I just
Yeah.
think that's so beautiful and empowering when we can really get awareness around that.
And when we have that awareness, we gain a different understanding and compassion for ourselves and for others. So rather than assuming, like, why did I do that? That was so dumb of me. I do this all the time. What's wrong with me? We have a, oh, it makes sense why I do that. Now, it may not be the most productive, adaptive thing that I can do, healthy thing I can do, but it makes sense why I do it. And then to be able to have that same compassion for others. And I think about being a parent or being a partner or a teacher, whatever roles we have, being able to see other people through that lens, we develop a sense of compassion that they are the way they are because of their nervous system.
Mhm,
And it's not necessarily about me or that they're bad people or that they're doing something. This is just how their nervous system is. Now, it doesn't excuse bad behavior. I'm not going to say, well, that's just their nervous system and they can do, but it does allow me to have an appreciation for why people respond and react the way they do. And then I can make decisions about how do I want to show up? What are the healthy boundaries I want to have? What are the values I want to live? How can I show up as who I want to be in my nervous system? So I just find the more work I do on my nervous system, my own personal one, the more it impacts my relationships. And I'll be honest and transparent in saying, sometimes that means having a little distance in my relationships
mhm,
from some people. Doesn't mean now everybody in my life and I'm wonderful. Sometimes it's actually learning that this relationship, the way it's functioning, is not healthy for me. And so I do need to put up some boundaries or make some changes, but that has improved my relationship with myself. And it improves my relationship with other people around me when maybe I'm not being sucked into something that's
mhm,
very dysfunctional that requires so much of my energy and attention. So I just like mentioning that because I think sometimes when we say, like, oh, it makes everything, it doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean there's
mhm,
no conflict. It doesn't mean that we don't have to put boundaries, but it does mean that I feel that I can live more authentically who I am, recognizing my divine value, who I want to be in this world, what I want to put out in this world. It allows me to be able to show up with a lot more integrity
mhm.
with myself.
Yeah, and I think for me, it kind of came together when I had another coach call it a context filter, but like the lens through which we see the world. And you
Yeah.
talk about how our nervous system flavors the way
Yeah.
we see things. And it's
Mhm.
just amazing to me as I've noticed that. But that filter, as we become more aware of it, creates that space for agency, for choice.
Yes.
That
Yes.
famous quote of Viktor Frankl,
Yes.
and I loved it before I even put it together with this work, but just that idea of the space between stimulus and response is where choice is,
Yeah.
but you have to take care of yourself to be able to access that
That's right.
agency. And I just think that idea is so powerful because we do get to choose who we want to be in the world. But if we don't understand the way our bodies respond to different
That's
things in
right.
our life, then we aren't really accessing agency in a
That's right.
way that is empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. And choice does require some deliberateness and some rational thinking, which means that we need access to our higher level skills, our higher level thinking, our higher level language skills, which we know biologically when we become dysregulated. So, meaning when our systems feel threatened in any way, we go into protection mode, defensive mode, we get energized. And what happens is all of our energy and resources get filtered towards protection to protect ourselves. And our ability to access our thinking skills at their highest levels is cut off. So we no longer are rationally thinking and reasonably thinking. That's why when we get upset about something, we can feel literally like, I can't think straight. And we'll be in an argument with somebody and they'll say something, well, I didn't mean to say that. Like, I don't know where that came from. And well, that doesn't make sense. I know I'm not making sense. That's why we do that, right? Because we don't have access to that higher level skill. So when we're dysregulated, we are functioning on very little rational juice. It becomes very, very reactive based on our primitive reflex, our survival brain, really is what it is. And choice does not exist there. Choice does not exist with that survival brain because it would defeat the purpose of the survival brain. If I have to decide whether I'm going to survive or not, like I probably won't have time to survive. So we have this automatic response that is taking care of our survival. Choice exists when we're able to calm and get ourselves into a state of connection where then I can access, okay, what do I truly believe? How do I want to show up? Do I understand? Even the whole piece of mindset. I love working with mindset, but there's no mindset discussion when you're in survival mode. Should I think this thought or should I think this thought? It doesn't matter. Your system is like, we don't care what you think. We need to survive. And so when you get regulated, all of a sudden now I can think like, is this helpful to me to think this way? What do I need to do? How do I want to choose? So agency is in regulation. And so if we want to access agency, we need to get to a place of regulation.
Yeah, I love that. I just think it's so powerful. It sounds so simple, but yet there's so much richness to it. And
Yeah.
that leads me to this idea I mentioned at the beginning of this recording that I've talked about you and what you do on my podcast. And I've taught some of the things that I've learned from you. But I would love to hear how the very beginning you built a foundation and then we went into establishing safety. So there's a little science woven in, and you're way smarter than I am in that regard. But there was a foundation set about why this matters. But then there's your safety sequence. And I would love to hear, how did you coin that 4-step process? How did you go, oh, we're going to do this and then we're going to do this and this? What was the process to get to there?
Yeah. So a lot of it is over the years, just collecting bits of information and then finding different language. As I was learning about the nervous system, I learned about it along the way, often through a trauma lens, because when we think of nervous system, we often put trauma together. And that was always fascinating for me because I worked in traumatic brain injury. I looked at people experiencing trauma. So I did learn factors like we know that certain things will be skewed when somebody has lived in environments where they've been exposed to a lot more trauma. So the reading of the world and what they take in. So I had been learning all the way along, we want to relax our body in order to feel safe, because you can never feel safe if your body's not relaxed. I knew that we got to get inside our body. I knew that external things come together. And then I did a lot of work learning about the idea of self-regulation, because as I said, that was a really important area in the area of traumatic brain injury. People struggle with regulating themselves. So putting this together, all the teachings together, when I was actually creating my journal, I was working with somebody who was interviewing me to try to pull out the information that would go in the journal, because you may not know that I have a tendency to be like a fire hose.
Some idea.
I'm being a little sarcastic with that because I warn people as soon as they take my training. And so I was just spewing out, you do this, and you do that, you do this. And she had said to me, she was like, I love what you're saying, but we need to create it in like simple steps for people to do. And I was like, well, I know from my teachings, putting all these things together, there are these simple steps that we have to do. We want to take into account neuroception and interoception and relax our bodies and everything. And she was like, okay, now we need to simplify it. And so I broke it down and simplified it. It was like, well, it's kind of like a sequence. And so it naturally, in one conversation, we're like, it's the safety sequence. It hasn't really morphed into more. It's still the same basic things. The idea is our brain and our body are one. We talk about it as being like the mind body connection, which almost implies like they have to be connected, but it's like this ongoing, beautiful circuit that can't be really separated. And we know that when we get activated, we go into a state of protection, which means that energy rises in our body. But how do we go into a state of protection? It's usually because there is some threat. So when we understand the nervous system, I'll back up a little bit because I don't want to make it too confusing. I don't want to too fire hose you either, but when we look at the role of the nervous system is to communicate with the mind and the body, and it's responsible for your survival, which means that all the way, all the time, we are assessing whether we are safe or in danger. That's the most fundamental thing that is responsible for our survival. How do we know whether we are in threat or in danger? Well, science has taught us that there are certain things that the nervous system is reading. One of them is it's reading external cues. It's looking around your environment and it's actually asking all the time, are you safe in this environment? Are you in danger? And this is called neuroception, which is sort of on an unconscious level, the constant questioning of your own safety. Is there a threat? Is there not a threat? Well, the challenge is sometimes our system thinks like burnt toast is a 5-alarm fire. So it always thinks, oh, there's a little smoke, you're in danger. So asking yourself, am I safe, is the first step in my sequence. And what that does is it kind of establishes that empirical physical safety, that yes, you are safe. So it tells the mind, even though you may think that you're in a threat, you're not. You actually are safe. So step one. The next thing we know is that so much of what is going in our body, it's like a language of our body that's constantly trying to communicate with us. And we don't usually listen. But our body is talking to us all the time. And it is telling us whether we feel safe or not. And it communicates through sensations and emotions, or sort of naming the sensations. So asking yourself, do I feel safe? And then scanning our body and noticing if you feel uneasy or tension or pain or nauseous, chances are very strong that your system is like, okay, you don't feel safe. Because if you felt safe, you probably would feel good, is strong, you'd at least feel fine. So the system is picking up and saying, okay, you may know that you're safe cognitively, but sorry, body is saying you're not safe. And so that puts us back into that threat state. Well, we know, like I said, I want to have choice. I want my CEO to come back online, my executive function skills. So I need to do something to regulate myself, to down-regulate myself. I need to do something to relax my body. So I'm not in that survival mode. And that is the third step. The third step is to relax your body. When your body is relaxed, it cannot house stress. It can't have anxiety. It can't have anything. That's when we open the doors back up to our rational thinking mind. And at that point, I can say, I know cognitively I'm safe. I'm aware of what's going on in my body. I've relaxed my body. I can now invite my thinking skills on and decide, hey, in this situation, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up based on my values, based on just the real moment, present moment, and then we can function. And then the whole thing starts all over again. And that's why I talk about the safety sequence as something that we want to be practicing. We want to get good at assessing our external, our internal, and relaxing. And we want to be practicing it throughout the day because for many of us, we don't have too many moments where we feel that sense of, okay, I feel relaxed, I'm thinking clearly, because we're constantly bombarded with what our nervous system reads as threats. So by doing this sequence over and over again, we're really starting to truly evaluate, is this a threat? Like the way she looked at me, it was a little bit of a side eye, but is it really harm? I'm still safe. And so going through the sequence teaches our nervous system what capacity, what safety feels like. And it invites us to have moment after moment after moment of safety so that we start to crave it. We start to be able to access it more automatically. And then that allows us to lead a life with purpose and meaning because we spend more time in a relaxed body.
It's so cool. I was doing a workshop recently with some young women in our stake, and I was teaching them this, and I had this one little girl, 'cause I was like, "I want you to understand that you're not a problem to be solved. You are a human being who is just trying to navigate this stuff." And she was like, "I wish I would have known that sooner." It just hurt my heart because she'd been going to therapy. She mentioned that and just she'd been dealing with feelings of anxiety and things like that. And I just thought, how come nobody told her that?
I know. In fact, one of the things that you'll hear me say is we brilliantly adapt to our environments, to our caregivers. Yes, we have genetics and we have lots of things that we're born with, tendencies, and then we learn how to adapt. And sometimes what happens as we get older is our adaptations aren't serving us as well, or they're not healthy, or they've kept us in a state that our body can no longer sustain. But it's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. There was not like, oh, you adapted terribly. Like, no, it was brilliant. We go to therapy or we talk to people and we say, like, oh, I do this. I wish I could change that. Well, let's first acknowledge that the reason that a lot of the things that we do, the way we do them, the anxiety that this beautiful girl has, is trying to protect her and brilliantly trying to do that. It's just now that we have more resources, we can say, hey, you know what? That anxiety did a great job. And your brilliant little self came up with that so that you could survive with whatever you want to survive. And if we're talking about younger people now and the rise of anxiety, we can look at all the things, the devices and the social media and the comparison. I was listening this morning, they were talking about the direct causal relationship of devices and social media to anxiety. So, of course, your system adapted with anxiety, but now you're at a point where either it's been maladaptive or you want to do something different. So we thank our brilliant self. Now, what else can we do? You're not broken. You're not wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. We just want to create healthier patterns for you now.
And I just think there's so much hope there. I think for many people, there is a feeling of brokenness.
For sure.
I think we can feel broken, but we aren't broken. Those are
That's right.
two different things,
Oh,
so
yeah.
different. And if we could help people see that. I love how you say brilliant little you is resourceful.
Sure.
Part of you
Yeah.
is able to protect yourself, and it served you to this point where you are.
And I love what you just said too about we can feel broken because feelings are always real. Like, I'm never going to fight with somebody about what they feel. It's always real, but it's not necessarily the objective, accurate truth. I remember I got into a disagreement, shall we say, with one of my kids. And we were having a bit of a back and forth. Eventually, a couple hours later, he's in his early 20s, and he came to me and he said to me, "Listen, Mom, I realize that this is just my feelings and you have different feelings. And I realize that this is my experience, but it doesn't mean it is the experience."
Mm.
And I was just like, "Oh, brilliant."
Wow.
Because I was like, yeah. And I have feelings, and it doesn't mean that my feelings are the accurate. We can both be in the same place and be like, everything that we both feel is very, very, very real. And it contributes to creating the dynamic. But one of them doesn't trump the other. And I think so often we do believe if I feel it, it must be true. Yes, if you feel it, it is true that you're feeling it. But we got to be careful with how we interpret. What does it mean? What is your interpretation? I can feel it and it exists in my body, but it doesn't mean that it's the truth. So I can feel very, very broken. Or I can feel like I'm not enough. I can feel like I don't have worth, but it's not necessarily accurate.
So good. That was one thing that I think was really key for me too, was your teaching about how emotions and your nervous system are in relation with each other, but they aren't the same thing. So I'd love for you to speak on that because I think for a long time, and granted, that's kind of in the beginning how I learned about it.
Yeah.
And so realizing that those are different, I think is really powerful and key as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
speak to that for a little bit.
I think it makes sense. We sort of throw the words together like nervous system regulation, emotional regulation are all the same, and they are in relation with each other. What you said earlier is the state of our nervous system kind of flavors everything that we do. And what I like to remind myself is it does, it flavors my thoughts, it flavors my emotions. It flavors my behaviors. It flavors my posture, my preferences, my breathing. It flavors everything, but it's not the same. I'll give you the example. If we talk about the nervous system, there's different states. And if we just go the very basic states, the main one is the parasympathetic state where we feel very, very safe and rested. I call it that zone of resilience where we're able to function and handle life. When we first start to feel threatened, we go up into a state of protection, which is more energized. So we add energy. It's a hyper aroused state. I call it team hyper. So I want you to think about what are emotions that you have that are more energized. Well, this is where we find anger and frustration and overthinking and worry and rumination and defensiveness and anxiety. You sort of feel there's an energy to them. And so these emotions are in that state. Now, if we are to drop down, say we go into a state where there's a hypo aroused, which usually happens after we've spent a lot of time in hyper, our system is just like, I can't afford this energy. We got to conserve. Or we are confronted with something that is so life threatening in our mind and in our nervous system, we drop down, we go into a hypo aroused protective state. They're all always for our survival. Well, in that protective state, I have less energy. So when I have less energy, when you think of what emotions have less energy, well, sadness and hopelessness and helplessness. So if I say to you, oh, I'm feeling so frustrated right now, you probably would guess it's not in a hypo-aroused state. It's in a hyper-aroused state. So that's where the first thing is sometimes we try to play with our emotions. Like, I'm just going to think a new thought so that I can have a different emotion. And yes, thoughts do impact our feelings, but feelings impact our thoughts. And the nervous system impacts everything. If I want to shift my emotions, chances are I need to shift my nervous system. It's very hard for me to stay in a hyperactive nervous system and drop down into feelings of, say, sadness or shame. Normally, what happens is my whole system. It's very, very nuanced, but it's important to know because I think that we don't want to make emotions good or bad either. We want to be able to feel all emotions. In order to feel and regulate all our emotions, we need some access to our CEO. And our CEO is in that zone of resilience, which means when I am activated, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, I'm angry. If I stay completely dysregulated, chances are I'm going to like pop off. I'm going to yell. I'm going to maybe be doing things that maybe not show up the way I want to show up. But I still want to be able to access those feelings. But if I can regulate my nervous system enough, not to get rid of the feelings, but to create the container for me to have the feelings in a safe, healthy way, that's when I'll be able to process and make all the changes. So we want to be able to regulate so that we can have a whole big container and I can feel anger and I can feel sadness and I can feel disappointment and I can feel resentment in a healthy way because my system is regulated enough.
Yeah. So good. Oh, Leah, you're just so smart. I love it so
Well,
much.
I'm very, very human. I have a lot of experience with this nervous system stuff,
Well,
having my own nervous system.
your work is paying off to it's the
Yeah.
benefit of everybody else. So appreciated. I know we're coming to the end of our conversation, but I know you have something new coming out that
I
kind of
do.
builds on what we've been talking about. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll be sharing more. I have coming up the week of March 23rd, 2026. I am doing what I'm calling a midlife recalibration week, which is we're doing 6 days, Monday through Friday, plus the following Monday, where I'm going to be introducing you to your nervous system. I'm going to talk in particular to midlife women. Just that's who I am. That's who I attract usually. And talk about why our nervous systems go through changes in midlife. We're also going to explore, I'm going to give you a little bit more of that experience of the safety sequence. And we're going to just talk about a couple other ways that we can work with our nervous system and how it impacts like our future life. So from there, I do have a new program that I'm going to be introducing people to. But I would love to invite people to a free masterclass. My goal is it's not just to consume, is to actually create and work along with me. I want you to actually have an experience with your nervous system. There'll be replays that are available for a period of time. So just really invite you to come join me there. And then otherwise, more information. I have a podcast called Building Resilience. And this is where we talk all about this stuff. This is where
Yes.
you'll get more of the fire hose.
I love it so much because you're like, I always find a way to tie it back to the nervous system. And your
That's right.
family knows that it's always going to go back to the nervous
It drives
system.
them crazy. They roll their eyes, and I'm just like, all roads lead to the nervous system. You can ask me, what are we having for dinner tonight? And probably within 2 sentences, I can tie it to the nervous system.
I love that so much. Well, we'll put the links in the
Awesome.
show notes for all of that. And this will come out just before this
Okay.
masterclass. So be sure to check Leah out. She has so many resources available to help you understand this. I can't say enough. Is there something you want to make sure listeners take away from this conversation as we end today?
I would love to just reiterate the importance of understanding that you are not broken, that you are brilliantly adapted. This series of masterclass that I'm doing, I'm calling it a recalibration because I think sometimes we feel like we have to fix things, or as we get older, we have to reinvent ourselves, or we have to make some changes. And I truly believe it's really a remembering of who we always are,
Mm.
who we've always been, and really understanding our value, our worth, our brilliant adaptations. And then moving forward, it is just about becoming who we always have been and uncovering, as opposed to like, I got to recreate and I got to fix this. And I love that you said to that young woman that you're not a problem to fix. Intellectually, I think a lot of us know that. But I think we still feel like, oh,
Mm.
but yes, I am. I've been either told that or I felt that. And just really, no, you're not. You brilliantly adapted. And now you may just want to choose to learn and unlearn and adapt. Our brain and nervous system is incredible. It's constantly changing and learning, and adapt to something that will serve us better for the stage of wherever we're at in life.
So beautiful. I can't help but think how divinely designed we are. The ability to learn and grow and protect ourselves and all the
Yeah.
nuances of being human, to me,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
testify of a creator. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for that. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for the way we were created. And
Yeah.
yeah, we can kind of get off in the weeds, and that's all part of the experience too.
That's it. That is all part of the
It's
messy middle and
all
the
part of it. It's where
yeah.
growth happens.
Yeah.
And it really can be something beautiful if we can learn more about it and
Yeah.
embrace and accept who we are as we are into that growth,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I could talk to you for
Beautiful.
hours,
I
Leah.
know, I know. We could continue this. I agree. So
So thank you so much for taking the time to
thank
come
you
and
for
talk with
having
me.
thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Before I let you go, if something in this episode stirred something in you, I want you to know that there's a place to take it further. The free 30-day Conflict to Connection Challenge is exactly the kind of work, one small, honest step at a time, for 30 days, straight to your inbox, no perfection required, no falling behind, just 30 days of showing up for yourself. The link is in the show notes. It is free. It starts the moment you sign up. And if you're ready for someone to walk through this with you specifically, I do work with women one-on-one. You can find that at my website or reply to any of my emails, and I would love to chat. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And if this episode resonated, share it with one woman who needs to hear it, and I'll see you next week.